The perfect crime starts with no witnesses, no records, and the most brilliant minds behind it. The world knows him as the cleverest criminal to ever walk the earth. His name? Adrian Blackwell. At the age of 32, he is a criminal mastermind whose face has never been seen by the public. No one knows what he looks like, where he comes from, or what his true motivations are. His reputation, however, is legendary. Adrian has pulled off 17 robberies, 13 of them being high-profile bank heists, all without leaving a single trace behind. No fingerprints, no DNA, no evidence. It is as though he never existed. He has eluded the authorities for years, a ghost in the system, whose existence seems to defy the laws of probability. Adrian's early years are a mystery, though whispers among law enforcement suggest that he was once a brilliant student, possibly involved in elite criminal circles from a young age. No one has ever been able to pinpoint the moment he crossed the line, but by the time he was in his 20s, Adrian had already started his criminal career. Some say he started small, petty thefts and scams, but quickly moved up to more elaborate crimes. His intelligence, ability to read situations, and attention to detail made him unstoppable. However, his most ingenious quality was his ability to hide in plain sight. But every mastermind needs a partner, and Adrian's was Isabella Hart, a woman whose name would send shivers down the spine of anyone in the security and tech industries. At 28 years old, Isabella is a top-rated IT expert, a hacker with a past rooted in government organizations. Her skills are so advanced that she has been involved in securing the most sensitive data and systems for various government bodies. Isabella's knowledge of security protocols, encryption, and surveillance systems made her the perfect accomplice for Adrian. She had the ability to manipulate and bypass the latest security technologies, rendering even the most advanced measures useless. Their partnership was a marriage of perfect minds, Adrian, the mastermind with a flair for planning the perfect heist, and Isabella, the tech genius who ensured there was no evidence left behind. Together, they committed their first robbery, and it was so flawless that it became the foundation of their legend. With Isabella's help, Adrian pulled off one heist after another, always staying one step ahead of the authorities. They had no known motives, no pattern, and they never took anything but money, never leaving any personal marks or connections to themselves. But questions linger. Who is Adrian Blackwell really? What made him turn to a life of crime, and what drives him to continue with such audacity? And what about Isabella? How did a woman of her talents fall into the world of crime, and what does she want from this partnership? Could they really be untouchable? Will they ever slip up, or will they continue to outsmart the world's most advanced security systems? The mystery deepens, and the stakes rise. If you are curious to uncover the secrets of Adrian and Isabella's twisted partnership, and if you want to know what happens next in their dangerous game, make sure to like this story and subscribe to follow their journey. Adrian Blackwell had the perfect mind for planning a heist, but what truly made him unstoppable was his partner, Isabella Hart. While Adrian's skill was in orchestrating the perfect robbery, Isabella's genius lay in making the impossible possible. She was not just a hacker, she was a master of manipulation, the kind of person who could break into the most secure systems without leaving a trace. Her knowledge of government security systems was unparalleled, and when combined with Adrian's cunning, they were a force no one could stop. It was during one of their first major heists, targeting an ultra-secure bank, that Isabella truly proved her worth. As the robbery unfolded, she sat in front of a bank of computers, her fingers dancing over the keys, cracking encryption and bypassing firewalls as though it were second nature. The bank's entire security infrastructure was designed to be foolproof, with facial recognition technology, 24/7 monitoring, and state-of-the-art alarm systems. But none of that mattered once Isabella was at the controls. She manipulated the security cameras, looping footage of the vault room to make it appear empty. She disabled the alarm system without a single blip on the monitoring radar. Even the bank's most advanced motion sensors were nothing more than a nuisance, as Isabella bypassed them effortlessly. She worked like an artist in her studio, and with every keystroke, the heist moved one step closer to perfection. As Adrian and Isabella made their way into the vault, the weight of millions in cash was hardly a concern. It was too easy, too calculated. Every move had been rehearsed. The plan had been set in motion months before, with each detail meticulously planned out. The two of them, hidden in plain sight, moved through the system undetected, their escape route already prepared. By the time the authorities realized what had happened, it was too late. The money was gone, and the only thing left behind was a digital fingerprint so clean, it seemed like no one had ever been there. For the first time, law enforcement realized they were dealing with criminals who could not be caught by traditional means. This was not just a robbery, it was an intellectual game, and Isabella Hart was the master of the board. Isabella's skills were more than just technical. Her calm, calculated demeanor in the face of danger was something Adrian had come to admire. She had the uncanny ability to predict every possible outcome, to think 3 steps ahead. It was as if she could read the mind of anyone who stood in their way, and that made her invaluable. But even she had a dark secret, one that she had buried deep in her past. A past that she could not escape, no matter how far she ran. But as Adrian and Isabella reveled in their success, a nagging feeling began to grow inside them both. How long could they keep pulling off these heists without slipping up? How many times could they outsmart the authorities before their luck ran out? Isabella's secrets were starting to catch up with her, and Adrian began to notice the cracks forming in their perfect partnership. The next heist was already in the planning stages. The target, a high-security government facility rumored to house rare artifacts and untold wealth. But as they began to prepare, Isabella's past came calling. Her former employer, a government agency, had begun to take notice of her disappearance. And they were not going to let her go so easily. What happens when the one person who controls the digital world begins to unravel? Will Isabella's past catch up to her, or will she outsmart her former employers, just as she had done with everyone else? And how will Adrian react when he learns the truth about his partner's past? The pieces are in place, but the game is far from over. What will happen when the mastermind faces the consequences of their own creations? In the world of crime, invisibility is the ultimate weapon. As Adrian and Isabella continued their string of flawless heists, they began to realize that they were not just criminals, they were artists, each job a masterpiece, a calculated stroke of genius. With each robbery, the world's most advanced security systems seemed to crumble beneath their feet. The authorities were left with nothing but empty vaults and unanswered questions, but one thing was certain, Adrian Blackwell and Isabella Hart were ghosts, vanishing without a trace. Their existence seemed to defy logic, as though they were untouchable. Their ability to stay hidden was their greatest strength, and Adrian reveled in the chaos they left behind. Each time they vanished, the authorities scoured every corner of the earth, searching for any clue, any trace of their presence. Yet, despite their best efforts, nothing was ever found. No one knew where they went or what they did after each heist, and that uncertainty began to drive the investigators mad. Isabella, always one step ahead, had set up a network of safe houses, false identities, and untraceable bank accounts. Every move they made was planned to perfection, down to the smallest detail. They were not just robbing banks, they were reshaping the very definition of crime, making it so clean that it was almost invisible. If they wanted to disappear, they could vanish without leaving so much as a ripple behind. But with every heist, there came a price. Adrian started to feel the weight of their success. Each robbery left him more restless, more consumed by the chase. He had once believed that their perfect partnership would never falter, but now, as he watched Isabella grow more distant, something felt off. Her secrets were beginning to surface, and the cracks in their flawless plan were starting to show. Isabella, for all her brilliance, was not immune to the toll their life of crime had taken. There were nights when she would sit in silence, staring at nothing, lost in thought. Adrian could see it in her eyes, the burden of carrying so many secrets, of knowing that one mistake could bring it all crashing down. And while she had always been the calm, collected one, Adrian could feel her slipping away, her mind preoccupied with something far more dangerous than their heists. What started as a partnership built on trust was beginning to unravel. Adrian began to suspect that Isabella was hiding something from him, something far darker than just her past in the government. He could see the anxiety in her eyes, the tension in her movements. She was no longer the cool-headed genius he had come to rely on, she was a woman on the edge, and Adrian could sense that she was close to a breaking point. And then, just when Adrian thought he could read her like an open book, Isabella surprised him. She brought a plan to him, something bigger than anything they had ever attempted before. It was the heist of a lifetime, the kind of job that could set them up for good. But there was a catch: they would need to pull off the job without leaving a single trace. No evidence, no witnesses, no chance of being caught. As the plan began to take shape, Adrian could not shake the feeling that this heist would be different. There was something in the air, an unease that he could not explain. The thrill of the game, once so intoxicating, now felt hollow. Could they really stay hidden forever, or was this the moment when their luck would run out? The night of the heist arrived, and everything seemed to go according to plan. But just as they were about to make their escape, something unexpected happened. A security system they had never encountered before triggered, sending shockwaves through their entire operation. For the first time in their careers, Adrian and Isabella were faced with a situation they had not prepared for. Had their perfect record finally come to an end? Was this the moment when they would slip up, or would they once again defy the odds and vanish into the night, untraceable? The tension builds. As the system locks down around them, Adrian and Isabella are left with a single choice: fight their way out or disappear for good. But one thing is certain, the game has changed, and they must now face the consequences of their past actions. What will they do when their ghostly existence is threatened, and can they truly outsmart a system that seems to know them better than they know themselves? Trust is fragile. In a game of lies, no one is safe. The figure before them stood in the shadows, an enigma, his presence a sharp contrast to the slick, polished precision of their plan. Adrian's grip tightened on the bag of money at his side. He could feel the weight of everything, the stolen cash, the adrenaline, but most of all, the uncertainty of what was to come. This was not supposed to happen. This was not part of the plan. Isabella had always been the calm in their storm. But now, standing next to Adrian, she was tense, her eyes flicking back and forth between the figure in front of them and the exit they were supposed to reach. Her hand brushed against her jacket, fingers grazing the cold metal of a concealed weapon. Adrian could feel the familiar coldness of the air, but it was not just the temperature, it was the growing tension, the sense that something had shifted, something had broken. "You are not leaving here," the shadowed figure said, his voice sharp, as though the words had been waiting in the dark for years to be spoken. "Not until you answer for what you did." Isabella's expression remained unchanged, but Adrian could see the flicker of something in her eyes, something he had never seen before: hesitation. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. The ice in her veins seemed to have thawed just enough for Adrian to feel a chill run down his spine. "Who are you?" Adrian demanded, stepping forward, his voice steadier than he felt. "What do you want from us?" The figure smirked, stepping into the light just enough for Adrian to see the faint glint of recognition in his eyes. "I should be asking you that. After everything, after you left without a word. I think I have a right to know why you are still playing this game." Isabella took a deep breath, and for the first time, Adrian saw a crack in her flawless facade. "It is not what you think," she said, her voice low, barely above a whisper. Adrian felt his heart hammer in his chest. What was not she telling him? This was not just a former associate or some ex-ally who had lost his way. This man, this figure, had history with Isabella, a history she had never once shared with him. He could see the strain in her jaw, the tightness around her eyes. The figure laughed bitterly, as if reading Adrian's thoughts. "You did not know, did you? You did not know that Isabella is not just the tech genius you think she is. She is much more than that." Adrian felt his stomach twist. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, but the question barely escaped his lips before the figure's word struck like a bolt of lightning. She has been playing both sides, the figure revealed, his words like daggers. While you have been stealing millions, she has been feeding information to the very people who have been hunting you. She has been a double agent, Adrian. All along. Time seemed to stand still. Adrian's mind raced, the words echoing in his head as if the world had suddenly shifted on its axis. Isabella, a double agent? It did not make sense. The woman who had been his closest ally, who had stood beside him through every heist, every escape, could she have been betraying him the whole time? Adrian turned to Isabella, his voice barely above a whisper. Is this true? For a moment, there was silence. Isabella's face remained emotionless, but the faintest flicker of guilt flashed across her eyes. Adrian's heart sank. He had trusted her. They had built this empire together, one heist at a time. But now, everything he had believed in was crumbling. He did not know who to trust anymore. I never wanted this, Isabella said softly, her voice breaking through the tension. But I had no choice. You do not know who I am dealing with. The figure stepped forward, his presence now looming over them. You have been nothing but a pawn, Adrian. And you were always too blind to see it. Adrian's mind was reeling. He had thought that the heist, the planning, the execution, it was all his doing. But now, it seemed as if Isabella had been pulling the strings from the start. Was this really the end? Had they finally hit their breaking point? Adrian had a decision to make, trust the woman he had worked with for so long, or cut her loose and fight for his own survival. Isabella, we can end this now, Adrian said, his voice steady, though his mind was anything but. We can still get away. We still have a chance. But the look in her eyes was something Adrian had never seen before. There was no trace of the woman he thought he knew. This was someone else, a stranger who had been hiding behind the mask of his partner. And now, the walls were closing in. If you are still here, still following the twists and turns of this story, do not forget to like and subscribe. Sometimes the only way to escape is to step into the trap willingly. The tension in the air felt suffocating. Adrian stood frozen, his gaze locked on Isabella, who was now a shadow of the woman he thought he knew. Betrayal hung in the air like a thick fog, thick enough to cloud every thought. The figure in front of them, that man from her past, was a problem Adrian had not seen coming, a complication in their already dangerous game. The alarm that had once been distant now seemed to echo in his ears, drowning out everything else. They were so close to getting away. They had the money. They had the perfect plan. But now, all of that was slipping away. You are not leaving here, the figure said again, stepping into the light, his cold eyes meeting Adrian's. Not until you face the truth. Adrian's pulse quickened. He had to think fast. His mind raced, but it was hard to process anything with Isabella standing there, her face, unreadable, as if the woman he had trusted for so long was now nothing more than a stranger. His instincts told him to run, to fight, but something in Isabella's demeanor stopped him. She was not the same person he had relied on for years. Something had changed. You left us, the man continued, his voice sharper this time. You left everything behind, and now you think you can just walk away, after all the lies. After everything you have done. Adrian turned to Isabella, his eyes searching hers for answers, but he found none. Isabella, who is this? His voice was steady, but inside, everything was crumbling. What is happening? Isabella's hand trembled slightly as she stepped forward. Adrian, this is something I never wanted. I never planned for it to go this far. You think you can keep lying to him? The man sneered. You think he will believe you? After all this? She stayed silent for a long moment, the weight of her own secrets hanging in the air. I had no choice, Isabella finally said, her voice breaking slightly. They made me. If I did not work for them, they would have killed me. They would have killed both of us. Adrian's mind spun. Who were they? What was she talking about? He had never been told the whole story, never suspected that Isabella, his partner, the woman who had always been a step ahead, had been playing both sides all along. Who are they, Isabella? Adrian demanded, his voice growing more intense. Who do you work for? Her eyes flicked nervously to the man, and for a second, Adrian thought he saw something flicker in her, fear, maybe. She took a deep breath before answering. The government, she said quietly, barely above a whisper. They have been following us, Adrian. Watching every move we make. Adrian's heart dropped. The government? He echoed, as if saying the words aloud could somehow make them make sense. How long? How much have you known about all this? The figure, growing tired of their exchange, stepped forward. Let us cut to the chase. It is simple, really. We want the money you have stolen. All of it. And we want everything you know about the next job, everything you have planned. Adrian's blood ran cold. This was no longer about money. It was about power. They were being hunted, not by law enforcement, but by forces far more dangerous, forces that could not be outsmarted, not by the likes of Adrian Blackwell and Isabella Hart. I am not giving you anything, Adrian said, his voice low and steady. You are not taking this from us. The man chuckled, as if Adrian's words meant nothing. You do not get it. It is already over. The second you two decided to pull that last job, you sealed your fate. You do not walk away from us. Not now. Not ever. Isabella took a step back, her face pale. Adrian could see the uncertainty in her eyes now, the same uncertainty that had taken root in his own mind. She was not the one calling the shots anymore. And he did not know who to trust. Adrian, we do not have a choice, she said, her voice barely audible. We cannot fight them. Not like this. They are too powerful. Adrian's mind was racing, but something inside him snapped. He could not, no, he would not, give up. Not yet. Not without a fight. He turned to Isabella, his eyes piercing. You are telling me to run. To just give up and let them take everything from us? Isabella's lips trembled. I never wanted this, Adrian. I never meant for it to go this far. For the first time, Adrian saw her true vulnerability. It was not the cool, calculated partner he had once known. It was a woman broken by her own decisions, trapped by a past she could not escape. And now, everything had come crashing down around them. Adrian glanced back at the man in the dark suit, who was growing more impatient. The weight of their options hung heavy in the air, escape, fight, or give in. None of them seemed to offer a way out. But deep down, Adrian knew one thing for sure, if he was going to survive, he would have to fight for it. But what if the fight was already lost? Could they escape this web of lies and deception? Or were they truly trapped? The tension between them was suffocating. The time to act was running out. In the end, the only way to win is to survive. Adrian stood frozen, his heart racing, every muscle in his body screaming for action. He could feel the weight of the gunmetal-colored bag slung across his shoulder, the money inside, a fortune that could change their lives. But it was no longer just about the money. It was about survival. About trust. And about facing the truth of what they had become. The man in the dark suit stepped closer, his eyes unblinking, calculating. You still do not get it, do you, he said, his voice cold. This was never just about the heists. It was about control. And now, you have lost. Isabella's voice was almost a whisper. We cannot go back now, Adrian. It is too late. Adrian's pulse quickened. He had to think fast. His mind raced, but it was hard to process anything with Isabella standing there, her face, unreadable, as if the woman he had trusted for so long was now nothing more than a stranger. His instincts told him to run, to fight, but something in Isabella's demeanor stopped him. She was not the same person he had relied on for years. Something had changed. "You left us," the man continued, his voice sharper this time. "You left everything behind, and now you think you can just walk away, after all the lies? After everything you have done?" Adrian turned to Isabella, his eyes searching hers for answers, but he found none. "Isabella, who is this?" His voice was steady, but inside, everything was crumbling. "What is happening?" Isabella's hand trembled slightly as she stepped forward. "Adrian, this is something I never wanted. I never planned for it to go this far. You think you can keep lying to him?" The man sneered. "You think he will believe you? After all this?" She stayed silent for a long moment, the weight of her own secrets hanging in the air. "I had no choice," Isabella finally said, her voice breaking slightly. "They made me. If I did not work for them, they would have killed me. They would have killed both of us." Adrian's mind spun. Who were they? What was she talking about? He had never been told the whole story, never suspected that Isabella, his partner, the woman who had always been a step ahead, had been playing both sides all along. "Who are they, Isabella?" Adrian demanded, his voice growing more intense. "Who do you work for?" Her eyes flicked nervously to the man, and for a second, Adrian thought he saw something flicker in her, fear, maybe. She took a deep breath before answering. "The government," she said quietly, barely above a whisper. "They have been following us, Adrian. Watching every move we make." Adrian's heart dropped. "The government?" He echoed, as if saying the words aloud could somehow make them make sense. "How long? How much have you known about all this?" The figure, growing tired of their exchange, stepped forward. "Let us cut to the chase. It is simple, really. We want the money you have stolen. All of it. And we want everything you know about the next job, everything you have planned." Adrian's blood ran cold. This was no longer about money. It was about power. They were being hunted, not by law enforcement, but by forces far more dangerous, forces that could not be outsmarted, not by the likes of Adrian Blackwell and Isabella Hart. "I am not giving you anything," Adrian said, his voice low and steady. "You are not taking this from us." The man chuckled, as if Adrian's words meant nothing. "You do not get it. It is already over. The second you two decided to pull that last job, you sealed your fate. You do not walk away from us. Not now. Not ever." Isabella took a step back, her face pale. Adrian could see the uncertainty in her eyes now, the same uncertainty that had taken root in his own mind. She was not the one calling the shots anymore. And he did not know who to trust. "Adrian, we do not have a choice," she said, her voice barely audible. "We cannot fight them. Not like this. They are too powerful." Adrian's heart raced. He had promised her they would make it out, but now it seemed like the world was closing in on them faster than they could escape. The police would be on them in minutes. The escape route they had planned was no longer an option. They needed a new plan. He looked at Isabella, her eyes wide with fear and pain. She had been through so much. So much that she had never told him. But he could not afford to focus on that now. "We are not finished yet," Adrian said, his voice steady, though his mind was anything but. "We will get out of this. Together." But the truth was, he was not sure how. The future was uncertain, and as they stumbled through the darkened streets, the sirens growing louder, Adrian had no idea if they would make it to safety, or if this was where their journey would finally end. The stakes had never been higher. They had played the game perfectly until now, but the last move was always the hardest. And this time, Adrian was not sure they had any more moves left. Not all crimes are solved. Some criminals are just too clever to be caught. The sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Adrian and Isabella were running out of time. The narrow alley they had escaped into was their only way out, but it was also their trap. The city's pulse was quickening, and the walls seemed to close in around them. With every step, they were getting closer to the edge of the abyss, but neither of them had the strength to turn back. Adrian pulled Isabella into an abandoned building, the door slamming shut behind them. The once thriving business district was now a ghost town, the towering skyscrapers casting long shadows over their path. Every sound, every creak, was amplified in the silence of their hiding place. He glanced at Isabella, who was clutching her wounded shoulder, her face pale but determined. There was no time to patch her up, no time for anything except survival. "We cannot stay here," Adrian said, his voice strained. "We have to move." Isabella nodded weakly. "But where do we go? We are out of options." Adrian was quiet for a moment, his mind racing. His plan, the one that had worked for so long, was falling apart. Every move, every decision was getting them deeper into the web of lies and deception they had woven together. There was only one thing left to do. "We make one last move," he said, his tone unwavering. "One final heist. But this time, we take them all down." Isabella's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "The government. The people who have been hunting us," Adrian said, his voice low. "We use everything they have against them. We expose them for who they really are. It is the only way out." For the first time in days, a flicker of hope sparked in Isabella's eyes. "You think it will work?" "It has to," Adrian said firmly. "There is no other choice. We either fight, or we die." The decision was made. They would take on the very system that had been pulling the strings from the start. But they could not do it alone. They would need to expose the people who had used them, betrayed them, and brought them to this point. The risk was enormous, but the reward? Freedom. The chance to disappear, to make a new life. With one final plan set in motion, Adrian and Isabella moved quickly. They worked through the night, using every ounce of their skill and cunning. They hacked, they manipulated, they worked in the shadows. It was the final heist, the one that would reveal everything to the world. Every secret. Every lie. Every betrayal. As the first rays of morning light peeked through the cracked windows of their hideout, they knew the storm was coming. The authorities would be closing in on them. But this time, they had the upper hand. The system would be exposed, and the people who had pulled the strings would have nowhere to hide. The next few hours felt like an eternity. Adrian and Isabella moved like ghosts, slipping in and out of locations, planting the evidence that would bring everything to light. It was a race against time, but in the end, they had done it. They had won. Adrian stood at the edge of the rooftop, looking out over the city. The sun was rising, casting its golden light over the skyline. He felt a sense of peace wash over him. They had done it. They had pulled off the ultimate heist. But this time, it was not about the money. It was about revenge. It was about freedom. Isabella stood beside him, her shoulder bandaged, but the light in her eyes was brighter than it had been in days. "We made it," she whispered. Adrian nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. "We made it." But just as they were about to leave, a familiar sound reached their ears, the sound of approaching sirens, growing louder and louder. They had done everything right, but the fight was far from over. The authorities would be on them soon. Their freedom, though within reach, was still uncertain. But Adrian was no longer afraid. They had already outsmarted the system once. And they could do it again. As the sirens echoed closer, Adrian turned to Isabella. "Let us disappear. Let us finally vanish into the shadows." And with that, they walked into the unknown, ready to begin a new chapter of their lives. The world may have thought they were gone, but in reality, they had just begun. If you are still watching this story, do not forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment below telling us where you are watching this story from, and if you want to see what happens next, make sure to hit that notification bell. We need 1,000 likes on this video to continue the journey.